Next up, Secretary of Labor Thomas Perez, who will dive into wage and workforce issues. Secretary Perez first joined the administration as head of the Office of Civil Rights at Justice. He joins my colleague, Margaret Carlson, a columnist at Bloomberg View and an Atlantic contributing editor. Margaret?
Well, Mr. Secretary, we're ahead of the game this year. I interviewed Secretary Sylvia Matthews-Burwell last year, and we showed up in almost exactly the same outfits. So I thought, well, I'll wear my Easter Sunday outfit today, and there's no chance you'd be wearing pink. So there'd be no embarrassment. At this moment, we've just gotten Loretta Lynch confirmed as the Attorney General.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah, after the longest wait, I think, ever. And you were on the short list at one time, I think, for that job, having been at the Civil Rights Office. So how does this portend like a better time on the Hill for all people like the administration, people trying to get stuff done up there?
Well, I'm thrilled for Loretta. I know her well. I've worked with her. She is a fantastic attorney and, frankly, equally importantly, a fantastic person. I happen to have had lunch yesterday with the Attorney General, Eric Holder, and I think he's pretty thrilled as well. He's had a good run.
He's
and
ready
he's
to go
also
home.
ready for the next chapter, and it was an honor to work with Attorney General Holder, and I'm confident that Loretta is going to do an equally fantastic job making sure that justice is justice for all.
So income inequality has become like the weather. It's something everybody talks about, even Republicans, pay some attention to it. But no one's really tackled it in a way that makes you feel good about the working class and the middle class getting back up to sea level. What are you doing
Sure.
on that front?
Well, I mean, I think there's three dimensions to our work, and I look at where we've come. When the 3 months before the president took office, we lost 2 million jobs. Now we've had this stretch of over 5 years in a row, 61 consecutive months of private sector job growth. The last year was the best year since the late 90s. The difference between the late 90s and now is that the wind that was at our back in the late 90s resulted in, it lifted more boats. It resulted in more shared prosperity. And
because
this is
most of the jobs are at a lower level.
Well, actually, if you look at the last 2 years, the jobs that have been created have been much better paying jobs. When you recover from a recession, the first jobs that tend to come back are the lower paying jobs. You look at the biggest growth area over the last year has been business and professional services. These are well-paying jobs. But at the same time, you look at the links between productivity and wage growth, and the unfinished business is undeniably making sure that we lift wages in a meaningful way. And there's really three dimensions to our work in that area. One is the skills dimension, making sure that people have the skills to compete for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. There are 5 million vacancies right now as we sit here. 5 million job openings across this country, and 1/10 of them are in IT. So we're spending a lot of time working together with folks in the private sector, using the public workforce system, using our partners in community colleges and other places of higher education to dramatically expand our investments in that skills infrastructure. I call it an Eisenhower moment. Everywhere I go, my world is a very interesting Groundhog Day. I have a conversation with business owners who tell me this. I'm bullish about the future, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's someone in IT, health, logistics. I want to grow my business, and one of my biggest challenges is I need that skilled workforce to succeed. And so we're trying to rebuild. This is the Eisenhower moment. He brought us the interstate highway system, and we're constructing a skills superhighway that has on-ramps and off-ramps so people can get credentials for the jobs of today and tomorrow. So that's the first dimension. The second dimension is the dimension of making sure that the work that we have pays a decent wage and has a safe workplace and decent benefits. And that involves a number of things. Obviously, we're working hard to raise the minimum wage. We're also working on using our regulatory authority. So, for instance, in the not-so-distant future, we'll be putting out a proposed rule governing overtime. People who work extra should be paid extra. And there's a lot of managers. When I was growing up in Buffalo, New York, managers were middle-class jobs. And many still are, and many are not, as a result of a regulation from about 8 or 9 years ago that we're trying to fix. So making sure that the terms and conditions of employment are helping workers, and conditions of employment include things like paid leave. You know, we're the only industrialized nation on the earth that doesn't have some form of federal paid leave.
Paid sick leave.
Paid sick leave, and you know, I talked family leave. You know, I'm going to be in Rhode Island tomorrow. Rhode Island is one of only 2 or 3 states that has done something about this at a state level. You look at data. You know, in the year 2000, female labor force participation in the U.S. and Canada of women between 25 and 54 was identical. You look now, and Canada is about 7.5% higher, and that translates to, if we had simply kept pace, we'd have 5.5 million more women in the workplace, and 5.5 million more women contributing to the Social Security Trust Fund, 5.5 million more women available to, you know, the Silicon Valley, to Wall Street, to all these areas, and we just haven't kept pace. We haven't led on leave, and other countries all around us, Canada, Germany, UK, Australia, countries governed by conservative ruling governments, countries governed by liberal ruling governments. This is not a partisan issue around the world. It's an understanding that it's part of your global competitiveness. So that's the second dimension, I think, of lifting up the terms and conditions. And then the final dimension, which sometimes folks don't associate with the Department of Labor, is making sure that that money that you have earned and put in a nest egg, that when it comes time to invest it, whether it's retirement or whether you're leaving one job and going to another, that you're getting the right advice. You know, 3 of the most important types of decisions people make are medical, legal, and financial. And, you know, when you go to your lawyer or doctor, they have a pretty clear obligation to look out for you. The majority of people who give financial advice do that as well. In my experience, I've seen so many players who, in this space, who are doing the right thing. But we've also seen way too many examples of people who got advice that was motivated by the commissions that were being generated as a result, as opposed to what was in the consumer's best interest. And so we have a proposal on the street right now, and we look forward to getting comment on it to make sure that everybody who is in this space of providing financial advice is looking out for your best interests. Because, you know, in the Leave It to Beaver world, you know, you worked 30 years, you retired, you got a party, you got a watch, and you got a pension, and you didn't have to worry about it because it was a defined benefit plan. Now we're in the world of 401ks, and you know, 401k was a rural highway in Connecticut, and IRA was your neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, now, you know, IRAs and 401ks are things that we have to take control over our own destiny on, and the cost of conflicted advice can be in the billions of dollars. And so when we tackle these 3 dimensions of skills and terms and conditions, and then making sure you're getting that hard-earned money working for you in every circumstance, I think we can do quite a bit to make sure we're helping the American worker.
You know, there are now ads on TV exposing financial advisors for just being on the take. I don't know if you've seen them, but it's trickling out there. Those are very powerful ads.
And you know, I've spoken to a number of advisors who are absolutely doing the right thing, and they tell me, Jack Bogle is the guy who founded Vanguard, and he said, you know, I've been in the business for over 60 years, and I've learned one main thing, which is when you take care of your customers, it's great for your customer, and it's great for you in your business. And frankly, that's true for the financial services industry, that's true for plumbers, that's true for mechanics, that's true for lawyers, that's true, I think, across anywhere. When you put your customer first, you know, it has, the high road is the smart road.
Yeah. You know what strikes me about, say, the $9 an hour minimum wage, and you know, the efforts by some private corporations to raise it, is that, you know, you and I are recovering lawyers. My parents.
I was gonna lie down, but I thought it would be inappropriate therapy for today.
And my parents, I was the first to go to college. I don't know about you and your own family, but today that doesn't seem possible for so many kids because you know, both parents are working, but you know, $9 an hour as an aspiration is is not going to make it. What was your first job collecting golf balls?
Yeah, my first job,
which took no skills.
My first jobs, I worked on a golf course, on a driving range collecting golf balls. I worked at Sears, and I worked on the back of a trash truck.
Yeah.
And
I did similar things, although not close to the trash truck. But the idea that kids today can do that and the parents can make it happen with working 2 jobs, not knowing your hours, your employers wanting to put you into part-time work. This is such a bleak landscape, not to depress you and make you want to lie down on the couch, but it's such a bleak world for so many people. Every time I get in a cab, I ask the cab driver about his life, and I'm thinking, how could I possibly live his life?
Well, and that's the fundamental challenge that we have, and the we is everyone in this room and everyone in this nation. I spent the morning with a number of business leaders having a very similar conversation. And the challenge is, how do we build an America that works for everyone? How do we make sure that the wind at our back results in shared prosperity? And I'm always inspired when I meet workers who are, they have family responsibilities, they have a job, and they're going to school because they want to upskill. And I'm always inspired when I meet employers who have rejected this false choice of, I either take care of my shareholder or I take care of my worker. It's a false choice. We should be living in a stakeholder mentality where you can take care of your worker, you take care of your bottom line, and you can take care of your customers. There are examples across sectors, every sector, whether it's Costco in the retail sector. Southwest Airlines has been the most profitable airline domestic carrier over the last 10 years. If you're a baggage handler at Southwest Airlines, you're making a decent wage. But some of these legacy carriers, they've contracted that out. They've fissured their workplace, and baggage handlers in the Newark airport that Cory Booker and I met are making the minimum wage. The only wage increase they got was when the voters of New Jersey voted on a referendum. And that doesn't have to be the case. The high road, so many businesses have taught me, is also the smart road, because when you have those Henry Ford moments, and by that I mean, he doubled the wages of people on the assembly line because he had horrible attrition, over 300%, and he understood that, when your workers can afford your product, that's how we stimulate the economy. 70% of GDP growth is consumption. And so, so many business owners have told me this is a consumption-deprived recovery. And so we can create this virtuous cycle. And it involves not only, legal and regulatory and skills investments, but it also involves, making sure we're lifting up these incredibly promising models so that we can, it does not have to be the case that low wages and no benefits are the necessity of survival.
Right.
That is, low wages and no benefits are a choice. They are not a necessity.
So did you see the story about the Taco Bell lobbyists providing tacos for everyone on the Hill yesterday in hopes of keeping their franchise employees from unionizing?
I did not see that, and there are a lot of puns that come to mind, but I will resist that. It's interesting. I have spoken with a number. I was with folks from Ford and the UAW recently, and the success of Ford. I was down at they have a plant in Louisville, Kentucky. They make the Ford Escape there, and in the depths of the recession in 2008, they were not sure they were going to stay open. They had an existential crisis there, and what they did was, the union and management came together, understanding that we can't be fighting yesterday's fights. We're all in this together. And so they came together around a vision of shared sacrifice leading to shared prosperity. And 700, 800 employees they were down to in 2008. They're now at 4,400 and growing because they came together around that shared vision. And there is a growing body of research out there that shows that when you give your workers meaningful voice in the workplace, and a union shop is one example, but employee stock ownership, the emerging B Corp movement. There's so many different ways to give workers voice. There's a growing body of research showing that is also resulting in remarkably important bottom line gains. And so again, this notion that the only way to survive is a low wage, no worker voice, no worker benefit world. There are employers who are debunking that day in and day out, and there's now an emerging body of research that's debunking that. When you listen to your workers, they've got a lot of good ideas. I'm trying to do that at DOL, and I haven't had an original idea in years. And everything we're doing at DOL to improve our workplace have been ideas that our frontline workers have given us.
So you're on a listening tour like Mrs. Clinton.
I was on a listening tour day one when I got to DOL, and some of the most remarkable and successful innovations we have put in place internally have been the result of worker input. And in my travels externally, I am chronically optimistic at where we are, and I'm chronically impressed with the sacrifices that workers are making. Your question, Margaret, a few questions ago, really is just a big question. The article of faith in our country is that our generation is going to be better than our parents' generation, and our kids' generation is going to do a little better than ours. And that article of faith has been called into question for a lot of folks. And that's why the conversation we're having now about building inclusive capitalism and an economy that works for everyone, and making sure that prosperity, is available to everyone. That's what it's all about.
So I'm going to do a few quick questions. Robots. Lots of people prefer them to people who have, need sick leave and, will complain about the air conditioning or whatever. Robots don't cause those problems, and there are no safety issues. What's that going to mean for labor?
Well, technology is always going to be there, and there's, I've heard for many years that technology is always going to replace people. But there's also, again, and I've read a number of studies recently about this precise issue. There's also going to be no substitute in many cases for people. In the world of advanced manufacturing, it requires less people to do some of the same tasks that were done 20 and 30 years ago. But at the same time, so the challenge for us is to grow at scale. And we are seeing that. Manufacturing is coming back across this country. And so, I'm not afraid of technology. And a big key is that we need to make sure that people have the skills to compete in today's technology and tomorrow's technology. And so let's take the cloud, for instance. I've spoken to a number of CEOs in the IT space. And what we need to do is make sure we have people trained for today's cloud, but recognize that in short order, the cloud's going to look like the abacus. So they need to have the core competencies to adjust. That's what we didn't do in the 70s in Buffalo, where I grew up. There were too many people who were working at Bethlehem Steel who, that was a good middle-class job. But we did not equip them with the skills to adjust to what would happen after Bethlehem Steel goes south.
That's exactly what happened. I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We had Bethlehem Steel in Steelton, which was right next door. And when steel went, Harrisburg went bankrupt. That's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons, because there was nothing beyond that. So let me ask you about, quickly, to look back for a minute to the strike in the harbor in LA with the containers all stacking up. The ports were closed, so I heard that there was alcohol. You were sent by the president, and there was alcohol involved in in solving it. So give me the quick made-for-cable TV version.
Yes. Well, first of all, there wasn't actually a strike. There was a slowdown, and that's a big difference.
It looked like a strike, though.
And it felt like a strike if you're a farmer who's trying to get his or her product to market, and it's rotting at the ports.
Also, it was a little like the BP camera, where each day there were more containers stacked up.
And it was having a huge effect on our economy, and we'd been monitoring it closely for a long period of time. And in early January, a federal mediator was brought in. When he first came in, they were at their own 30-yard line. They had a pretty long distance to go. he made progress, and they were about first and goal at the 9-yard line, but they were stuck. And that's when the president directed me to go there. And I had a very clear message, and that was, I am agnostic on how you get those last 9 yards across the end zone, but we are not agnostic on how fast you do it, because there were too many innocent victims, whether it's retailing, whether it's farmers or others. And so you do what you do in a negotiation. You know, you sit in front, you sit with each side, you figure out what your leverage points are. You go out at night one-on-one with people. Mayor Garcetti of Los Angeles was an important partner in this because he had relationships that were critical. And as a result of that, and I said to them repeatedly that the ripple effects of this slowdown are being felt long, beyond the shores of the Pacific coast. And in the end of the day, they understood that time was of the essence, and so we were able to bring it across the finish line. And I talked to many retailers and others and farmers in the aftermath, and I said this to the folks during the negotiation. The West Coast ports have the advantage of location, 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 but when you ruin your brand, there's another subset. There's a first cousin of location, 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 and that is reputation, reputation, reputation. And when you do things that undermine your reputation, folks with global supply chains increasingly have options. Mexico is in the process of building a port with rail to Dallas. The ports in Canada had record years in 2014, and they're going to surpass them this year. The Panama Canal is widening. The mayor of Savannah, Georgia, never called me. He wanted that slowdown as long as it could be, because he was doing really well.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it is, I think, these realities, because there is a substantial portion of cargo that is what we call discretionary. They don't have to go to the West Coast ports. They can go elsewhere. And that, in the end, is what I spent a lot of time
Where did
persuading
the
them.
drinks come in?
Oh, one of the nights that we were negotiating. And, negotiating is all about, calling audibles sometimes and figuring out, how do you, how do you get to the point of things? And I knew time was of the essence. So when I got out there, it was a 24/7 proposition. And I wanted to do everything I could. So, we went out one night with one of the sides to, talk about things over a drink. And we were able to, I think, find some common ground over that.
Right. So Obamacare gets blamed for part-time work, employers wanting part-time work. What's your defense of Obamacare?
Obamacare was blamed for my flat feet. I mean, Obamacare has been blamed for
the weather,
global warming.
everything, yes.
And, the interesting thing about that critique is that, we have the privilege of having the Bureau of Labor Statistics at the department, and so we've studied this throughout. And the data simply belie this. I mean, the first critique of Obamacare was it was going to be a job killer. And if you look at the BLS data, the one industry that was the recession-proof industry was healthcare. And if there's a PolitiFact person here, go check the data. Throughout the Great Recession, that was the one industry that was still producing jobs and continues to. And then take when the Affordable Care Act was passed, and you look at now, and you see we continue to have that growth in jobs. And the notion that it led people to part-time jobs, the broad evidence belies that. Are there anecdotal examples of that? I'm certain that there are. We had a rapid response team that dealt with those issues. And there's these where were you moments. I always tell my kids on important issues of the day. I have an album cover in my office of Ronald Reagan during the Medicare debate. And the album was Medicare Will Lead to Socialized Medicine. That was the album cover. And he had a beautiful head of hair. And that was what I was most envious of, because that is not part of my thing. But
you're holding steady.
In that, not really. But you're very kind, Margaret. You're my new best friend.
Yeah, good.
He in that album, he said, Medicare will not only lead to socialized medicine, it will lead to socialism in America. He was wrong. And, I speak to people. I spoke to a guy named Ward in Nashville. He got his insurance on March the 1st of last year, and he had his liver transplant 12 days later. It saved his life. I speak to a guy out in Salt Lake who had kidney cancer, and he has told me how the Affordable Care Act saved his life. And what they both told me, I said, well, what do you want to do now that you're getting your health back? And both of them said the same thing. I want to work. I want to be a taxpayer. I want to get back out there and, support my family. And that's the story of the Affordable Care Act. We're on the right side of the facts. We're on the right side of history. And a lot of these talking points, just because you say it 1,000 times, doesn't mean it's accurate.
I think they might want us to leave, but I haven't gotten a time cue. Unions, they're creeping closer.
Here, if we keep moving over there, maybe we can buy a minute or two.
You lay down on the couch, and we'll get into that mode. Unions have gotten kind of a bad reputation. You hear union thugs overpowering, too much power. What's your view of the unions? I mean, they do seem less powerful.
Well, you look at, again, the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and if you are in a union job, you're making about roughly $200 more a week, and that doesn't include benefits. And, again, when workers have a voice, that is good for workers and it's good for business.
Whether it's through a union or some other way.
Whether it's through a union, there's a store in New England. Some of you are from New England are familiar with Market Basket. They had a big labor dispute last year, non-union shop, and that was a chain of stores that built a remarkable culture. Unions have built it. The B Corp movement, these are businesses that recognize that you do well
That's a wonderful
by
story,
doing
the
good.
Market Basket, yes.
The B Corp movement, I like to drink beer once in a while, and I got to meet the CEO recently of New Belgium Brewery out in Colorado, the second largest U.S.-based brewery,
yes.
And somebody's got to do it,
yeah.
Margaret, and so, and I bring that up because she has an employee stock ownership plan, and so her workers have a voice, and she wanted to make sure that was always part of the corporate culture, and so. When workers have a voice, whether it's unions, and when union density was at its highest, we also had our middle class was remarkably robust in this country. And so I'm a big believer in worker voice, whether it's through a union, whether it's through these alternative models of voice, because when workers succeed and have a voice, I think businesses succeed and America succeeds.
I find you so entertaining that I missed all the time cues. I want to apologize to all of you for not having time for questions, so forgive me, and I want to thank the secretary.
Great, thank you.